"I'll give you $5,000 if you speak Russian," the Mafia boss said, certain the young waitress would lower her eyes and walk away. But Evelyn Carter was 3 days from eviction, one missed payment from losing her mother's treatment, and far too desperate to be embarrassed. Outside, snow buried Boston beneath a white silence. Inside the restaurant, every man at Dominic Vale's table watched her like prey. Evelyn could feel the hospital notice folded inside her apron and hear her mother's voice telling her that some money costs more than it saves. Then she answered him in flawless Russian. What happened next was not only about danger, forbidden attraction, or a powerful man meeting the first woman who refused to fear him. It was about what survival can turn us into, and whether love can exist without control. Watch to the end like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. That answer did not make the room louder. It made it still. Dominic Vale rested one hand beside his whiskey glass and watched Evelyn as though the young waitress had just placed a weapon on the table. Around him, 5 men in dark suits forgot to smile. One of them slowly lowered his wine. Another glanced toward the restaurant entrance, perhaps wondering whether the woman standing before them was truly a waitress or something arranged for their entertainment. Evelyn kept the silver tray balanced against her hip. Her heart struck hard against her ribs, but her hand did not shake. Dominic spoke again in Russian. "Bring us the bottle from the highest shelf, the burgundy your manager saves for men he wants to impress." Evelyn looked toward the bar. "That bottle costs $1,400. Then he should be grateful I intend to pay for it." His Russian was controlled, but the stress on one word was still wrong. Evelyn allowed half a second to pass. "You misplaced the emphasis again." A man near Dominic inhaled sharply. Dominic did not look away from her. "Bring the wine, Miss Carter." The use of her name tightened something inside her, but she turned before he could see it. Every step toward the bar felt louder than the last. Behind the counter, Eddie Walsh had stopped pretending to clean glasses. His face was pale beneath the warm amber lights. He moved toward Evelyn the moment she came within reach and caught her wrist. "What did you say to him?" "The truth. That is not something men like Dominic Vale pay for." Evelyn reached toward the top shelf. "Tonight he does." Eddie held on. "You do not understand who he is." She looked back toward the corner booth. Dominic had not returned to his conversation. He was still watching her. "I understand enough. No, you understand the suit. You understand the watch. You see a man who walks into a room and gets the best table without a reservation." Eddie lowered his voice. "You do not understand why police cars sit across the street 3 nights a week and never come through that door." Evelyn looked down at his hand around her wrist. "My mother's treatment deposit is due Thursday." Eddie's grip loosened. For a moment, he was no longer her manager. He was simply a tired man who knew what it meant to choose between 2 bad things. That money will not feel clean tomorrow. It does not have to feel clean. Evelyn pulled her wrist free. "It has to clear." She carried the bottle back to the table. For the next 2 hours, Dominic tested her. He changed dialects without warning. He moved from formal Russian to street language, then quoted a line from an old poem about winter swallowing the road home. Evelyn answered with the next line. One of his guests asked whether she had learned the language from a boyfriend. Evelyn filled his glass. "No man has ever been patient enough to teach me anything useful." Dominic lowered his head, but not before she saw the smile touch his mouth. Another man muttered that she was performing for attention. Evelyn turned to him. "No." Her Russian became softer. "I am earning the money." The man looked ready to answer, but Dominic lifted one finger. The table fell quiet. "Confidence is expensive in this city," Dominic said. "So is medicine." The words escaped before Evelyn could stop them. Dominic's expression changed. The smile disappeared not because he was offended, but because something had moved beneath the surface. His gaze dropped briefly to the pocket of her apron, where the edge of the hospital notice was visible. Evelyn pressed her arm against it. Men like Dominic collected weakness. They stored it, measured it, and waited for the exact moment it became useful. He did not ask about the notice. That unsettled her more than a question would have. A few minutes later, the conversation shifted. The Russian men began discussing imported stone weather delays and damaged equipment at the harbor. Their numbers were precise. Their voices were calm. Something about the exchange felt rehearsed. Evelyn poured wine and listened. The older Russian guest said the shipment had arrived late because the harbor had been hungry. His companion looked at him, only for a second. Then both men became very interested in their glasses. Evelyn had heard the phrase before. Her grandmother used to collect stories from Russian dock workers who lived near Revere Beach. Men who had arrived in Boston with nothing but heavy coats, photographs, and words they believed Americans could not understand. The harbor is hungry. It did not mean bad weather. It meant something had disappeared before reaching land. Evelyn moved closer to Dominic. The shipment was divided. She spoke in English, barely moving her lips. Dominic continued looking at the man across from him. "How certain are you?" The older man used a dock phrase that has nothing to do with stone. "What does it mean?" "Someone took part of the shipment before it reached Boston." Dominic's fingers stopped against the side of his glass. The Russian guest continued speaking, unaware that the waitress beside him had already changed the room. Dominic asked a question in Russian. The older man answered too quickly. Evelyn saw it then, not in the words, in the silence afterward. The other guest had stopped breathing. She leaned closer. "He is lying." Dominic turned his head slightly. "About the delay. About who authorized it." Dominic's expression remained calm, but the men around him changed. Shoulders straightened. Hands disappeared beneath the table. The warmth of the restaurant seemed to drain toward the windows. Dominic asked for the shipping number. The Russian businessman hesitated. Only once. It was enough. What followed sounded polite to anyone who did not understand the language. Dominic spoke about insurance claims, replacement schedules, and revised terms. The older man apologized for the confusion. No one raised his voice. No one needed to. By the time dessert arrived, the missing portion of the shipment had been promised back along with a payment large enough to make the delay seem like an expensive misunderstanding. The Russian men left first. As the older one passed Evelyn, he paused. "You have chosen a dangerous table." Evelyn translated the sentence into English. Dominic looked at her. "You did not soften it. You paid for accuracy. And if accuracy causes blood, that depends on who decides to spill it." His eyes stayed on hers for a long moment. Near midnight, the restaurant emptied. Snow pressed against the windows thick enough to erase the cars along the street. The kitchen staff waited behind the swinging doors. Eddie stood near the bar, pretending not to listen. Evelyn placed the final bill beside Dominic. He did not look at it. Instead, he lifted his whiskey glass. Beneath it rested a black envelope. He pushed it toward her. A deal is a deal. Evelyn opened the flap. 5 crisp bills waited inside. $5,000. Rent. The hospital deposit. Groceries that did not come from the discount shelf. A week without waking before sunrise to calculate which emergency could be ignored. She closed the envelope. Its weight frightened her. Dominic reached inside his coat and placed a matte black card beside the bill. Silver lettering caught the low light. Dominic Vale, Maritime and Development. An address near Boston Harbor appeared beneath his name. "Noon tomorrow," he said. "For what? A conversation." "I already have a job." Dominic looked around the dining room. His gaze moved across the cracked leather booths, the worn carpet, the fading gold trim, and Eddie's exhausted reflection in the mirror behind the bar. "No," he said. "You have an emergency pretending to be a job." Evelyn slipped the envelope into her apron. "And you think you can solve it? I think you possess a skill this room cannot afford. People who work for you do not look relaxed. They are not paid to relax." Dominic rose and buttoned his coat. The fabric shifted. For an instant, Evelyn saw the outline of a gun beneath it. He moved close enough for her to smell cold air and cedar on his clothes. "Do not be late, Evelyn Carter." Her stomach tightened. She had never told him her full name. Dominic walked away before she could ask. His men followed him into the snow. A black sedan waited at the curb with the engine running. One of them opened the rear door. Dominic climbed inside without looking back. Evelyn watched until the red lights disappeared. Eddie approached slowly. "What does he want?" She turned the business card over. A sentence had been written on the back in Russian. "People show their true price when they believe they have no choice." Evelyn folded her fingers around the card. "To find out how much of me is for sale." The $5,000 stayed on the kitchen table all night. Evelyn sat across from it in the apartment she shared with her mother in East Boston. The radiator clicked without producing much heat. Wind pressed against the old windows, and every passing train made the glass tremble. Beside the envelope lay a rent notice, a hospital invoice, and an email from Commonwealth University warning that repeated absences could affect her scholarship review. She added the numbers again. They did not change. At 6 a.m, Claire Carter entered the kitchen wearing a faded robe. Illness had thinned her face and swollen her hands. She hid them inside her sleeves when she thought Evelyn was looking. Her eyes moved to the envelope. "Good night at work, private party." Claire filled the kettle. "You have always been a terrible liar. It is fortunate I study literature instead of theater." Claire did not smile. The kettle began to hiss. "Is it legal?" Evelyn looked at her. "The money," Claire said. "Or whatever you did to earn it." Evelyn pushed back from the table. "We have an appointment in 2 hours." "I remember. You tried to cancel the last one. I tried to postpone it. The doctor said the medication works best if you remain on schedule. The doctor does not pay our rent." Evelyn stood too quickly. The chair scraped across the floor. "You are not postponing anything." Claire turned off the stove. "I will not watch you destroy your future to keep me comfortable." "You are not a burden. That is not what I said. It is what you meant." The silence after that hurt more than the argument. On the train to the hospital, Claire watched the gray city pass beyond the glass. Evelyn kept one hand in her coat pocket wrapped around Dominic's business card. At the medical center, a billing coordinator spoke gently as she explained that Claire's next treatment could not be released without an additional deposit. Evelyn leaned forward. "How much time do we have?" 72 hours. Can we extend the payment plan?" "You are already on the longest available plan. What about the hardship fund?" "It is closed until the next quarter. My mother cannot wait until the next quarter." The woman's expression softened. "I am sorry." Evelyn hated the sympathy in her face. She hated herself for hating it. Behind the thin curtain, Claire had heard everything. On the train home, Claire spoke without looking at her. "We stop treatment for now." "No, you cannot force the hospital to release medication." "I can find the money." How Evelyn's hand moved toward the card in her pocket. Claire noticed. "What are you holding?" "Nothing." "Evelyn." The train entered a tunnel. Their reflections appeared in the dark window. Claire looked tired. Evelyn looked like someone already halfway inside a lie. At 11:30, Evelyn stood before Vale Maritime and Development. The glass tower rose beside Boston Harbor, reflecting a silver sky. Cargo cranes moved in the distance like enormous black skeletons. Men in heavy coats crossed the plaza with their heads lowered against the wind. Inside, 2 security guards studied Evelyn's second-hand coat. Then they checked the name on their screen. Their expressions changed. One guard stepped from behind the desk. "This way, Miss Carter." He escorted her to a private elevator. The doors closed without a sound. As the elevator climbed, Evelyn studied herself in the mirrored wall. She had borrowed Claire's pearl earrings and worn the only dark coat she owned. Nothing about her looked prepared for the top floor. The doors opened into a reception area larger than their apartment. A woman in a gray suit led Evelyn through silent halls. The harbor stretched beyond every window. Dominic stood inside his office with his back to the door. Ships moved below him through broken sheets of ice. "You are 2 minutes early," he said. "You told me not to be late. I wanted to see whether fear made you punctual. Rent makes me punctual. Fear only improves my posture." Dominic turned. Something close to amusement passed through his eyes. He gestured toward a chair. Evelyn remained standing. "How did you know my full name?" Dominic poured coffee into 2 cups. "I verify people before inviting them into my office. You investigated me while I was serving your table. I began while you were opening the wine." Anger moved through Evelyn, immediate and hot. "What do you know?" He offered her a cup. She did not take it. Dominic placed it on the desk. "Your scholarship does not cover books or medical leave. Your father died when you were 16. Your mother's first treatment failed. You owe 2 months of rent. Your faculty advisor believes you are too proud to ask for help." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You had someone follow me. I had someone confirm facts. What is the difference? In my world, verification ends when the facts are clear. Following begins when trust is not. You expect me to trust you after this?" "No." Dominic sat behind the desk. "I expect you to understand that I do not bring strangers near private conversations because they impress me in a restaurant." He pressed a button. A recording began through hidden speakers. 2 men spoke Russian about marble customs delays and damaged loading equipment. Their voices were controlled. Their pauses were not. Dominic watched Evelyn while the recording played. After 3 minutes, he stopped it. "What are they discussing?" "Imported stone." His expression did not change. Evelyn moved closer to the desk. "That is what they want a careless listener to hear. Continue." "One man changed the delivery location without permission. The other believes part of the cargo is missing. What cargo, they never say." "Then how do you know?" "The first speaker uses a phrase that means the warehouse is hungry. It is old dock and prison slang." Dominic leaned back. "He is not talking about marble, no. He is warning that someone will pay with money or blood." "You understood all of that from 3 minutes. I understood it from the silence after the word warehouse." For the first time, approval appeared openly in Dominic's face. He opened a drawer and placed a contract on the desk. Evelyn read the first page. The salary was more than 3 times what she earned at the restaurant. The hours could be arranged around university. Transportation would be provided. Claire's treatment would be covered through a private medical trust. Evelyn read the number again. "What exactly would I do?" "Translate conversations. Explain cultural references. Tell me when people are lying because they believe I cannot hear the lie. And what does Vale Maritime import wine, stone, art, construction materials? Whatever the paperwork says." A faint smile touched his mouth. "You learn quickly. What does it really import?" Dominic lifted his coffee. "I will never ask you to carry a weapon. That was not my question." "No." His voice remained calm. "It was the question beneath your question." Evelyn looked down at the contract. The salary could change her life. The medical trust could save Claire's. Knowing that made the room feel more dangerous. "What happens if I say no?" "You leave with the $5,000. And forget this conversation." Yes. I forget very little. I noticed. Evelyn sat down. She read every page. Then she took a pen from Dominic's desk and crossed out 3 clauses. His eyebrows lifted. She wrote her own conditions in the margins. She would not carry packages. She would not sign shipping documents. She would not handle weapons. She would not participate in physical intimidation. Her mother could never be used as leverage. She could resign at any time. Every payment for Claire's treatment had to pass through a legitimate trust, independent of Evelyn's continued employment. Dominic read the additions. You believe ink protects people. I believe evidence makes powerful people hesitate. His gaze shifted briefly toward the security camera in the corner. Then he signed beneath her changes. Keep that instinct, he said. It may keep you alive. Evelyn signed her name. The movement of the pen across the paper sounded louder than it should have. That evening, a black sedan collected her outside the apartment. The driver took her to a private dining room overlooking Boston Harbor. Evelyn wore her only black dress and Claire's pearl earrings. A garment bag waited in the back seat untouched. Dominic stood when she entered. His eyes moved over her once. You ignored the clothes I sent. I am a translator, not decoration. At this table, appearance is another language. Then let them interpret me carefully. His expression held irritation and admiration in equal measure. 3 Russian-speaking brokers waited inside. The oldest man had silver hair and hands that never stopped moving. He looked at Evelyn before Dominic could introduce her. Too young to sit at this table. Evelyn translated the sentence exactly. The meeting moved through contracts, insurance figures, harbor routes, and customs schedules. The silver-haired man described a delayed shipment. His numbers were precise, but he used the wrong grammatical case for the containers. It sounded memorized. Evelyn leaned toward Dominic. He is lying. Dominic kept his eyes on the man across from him. About what the shipment was not delayed. How certain are you? It was divided. He is repeating an explanation written by someone else. Dominic's fingers folded together. What makes you certain? He used the same unusual phrase as the man beside him. They claim they prepared separately. Dominic changed the offer. The room grew colder. Evelyn translated threats disguised as courtesy. Every sentence felt like a blade held flat against the skin. One wrong word could turn suspicion into violence. The silver-haired man finally agreed to return the missing cargo and pay a penalty. As he stood to leave, he looked at Evelyn. You have chosen a dangerous chair. She translated the words. Dominic rose behind her and placed one hand lightly against the small of her back. To the men watching, the gesture looked intimate. To Evelyn, it felt like protection and ownership at the same time. In the car, neither of them spoke until the harbor disappeared behind the buildings. Dominic handed her a sealed folder. Inside was confirmation that Claire's treatment had been paid for 6 months. Evelyn stared at the hospital seal. What did I help you do tonight? Dominic looked through the window at the city lights. You helped me avoid a war. That is not an answer. It is the only one you can still sleep with. Evelyn closed the folder. The car stopped outside her apartment. Before she opened the door, Dominic spoke. You softened the silver-haired man's first warning. I translated his words. You removed his intention. My contract says translator, not executioner. Dominic turned toward her. If you hide danger from me, you create more of it. And if I repeat every threat exactly, I may help create it. For a moment, neither moved. His voice became quieter. You wanted to know what you helped me do. Evelyn waited. You gave 4 men a reason to leave that room alive. She searched his face. She could not tell whether he was comforting her or training her. Inside the apartment, Claire slept peacefully. Her medication schedule rested on the counter marked paid. Evelyn placed the hospital folder beside it, then went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet. She washed her hands once, then again. The water became hot enough to redden her skin. Her phone lit beside the sink. Dominic Vale. She stared at the name until the final ring. Then she answered. Yes. His voice came through low and steady. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Evelyn looked at the woman in the mirror. There was nothing on her hands. She kept washing them anyway. Tomorrow, she said. 7. At 7 the next evening, a black sedan waited outside Evelyn's apartment. The driver opened the rear door without introducing himself. Evelyn climbed inside with her Russian notebook in one hand and the hospital folder in the other. She had spent the morning beside Claire during treatment, then crossed half the city to attend a seminar she barely remembered. Her body wanted sleep. Her mind wanted answers. Neither desire mattered once the car began moving. Boston passed beyond the windows in wet streaks of gold and white. Snow had turned to freezing rain coating the streets in glass. The sedan crossed downtown and entered a private garage beneath the Vale building. Dominic was waiting in a conference room with 6 men, 3 contracts, and a silence so tense Evelyn felt it before she understood the conversation. 2 of the men spoke Russian. One represented a shipping company in New York. The other claimed to handle customs clearance in Montreal. Their words were polite. Their faces were not. Evelyn sat beside Dominic and began translating. The man from New York blamed the delay on weather near the coast. His voice remained calm, but his left thumb kept rubbing the edge of his wedding ring. The man from Montreal spoke about new inspections at the border. He never looked at Dominic when he mentioned the missing containers. Evelyn translated every sentence. Then she leaned closer to Dominic. They are telling the same lie. He did not turn his head. How do you know they use different details but the same unusual phrase? What phrase? Administrative winter. Dominic's eyes moved briefly toward the speakers. No one says that naturally, not unless someone wrote it for them. Dominic folded his hands on the table. Ask who prepared their explanation. Evelyn translated the question. The 2 men looked at each other. The glance lasted less than a second. It answered before either man spoke. Dominic smiled. It was not a friendly expression. The meeting continued for another hour. By the time it ended, one contract had been torn in half. Another had been signed. Both men left under escort. Evelyn remained seated. What happens to them? Dominic gathered the papers. They will reconsider their loyalties. That is not what I asked. It is the answer I am giving. Evelyn closed her notebook. You pay me to tell you what people mean, not only what they say. That is correct. Then you should understand why I expect the same from you. Dominic looked at her for a moment. Then he dismissed everyone else from the room. The door closed. He sat across from her. You believe transparency creates safety. I believe secrecy creates fear. Fear creates obedience. Only until someone becomes more afraid of losing themselves. Something changed in his face. You speak as if that has already happened. Evelyn thought of Claire's medicine in the refrigerator. She thought of the black car downstairs, the contract in her drawer, and the money sitting in a bank account she had not yet learned to trust. I am still deciding. Dominic watched her closely. Then he slid a file across the table. Inside was a schedule for the next day. Claire's medical appointment appeared at 8 in the morning. Evelyn's university seminar followed at 1. A private dinner was listed at 7. She looked up. How do you know my class schedule? You gave it to my assistant. I gave her the hours I was unavailable. I prefer complete information. I prefer boundaries. Dominic rose. In my world, incomplete information gets people killed. Evelyn stood too. In mine, complete access is called control. For the first time, amusement warmed his eyes. You are becoming less afraid of me. No. Evelyn picked up her bag. I am becoming better at hiding it. The next 6 weeks passed in fragments, morning light through hospital blinds. coffee cooling beside unfinished essays. Dominic's voice in her ear during negotiations. Claire sleeping beneath a thin blanket while medication entered her bloodstream. Snow falling over Boston Harbor, headlights sliding across dark apartment windows. Evelyn learned to change clothes in the back seat of a car. She carried textbooks beside confidential folders and kept a toothbrush in her purse. By day, she was still Evelyn Carter scholarship student, daughter teaching assistant, and former waitress who had suddenly stopped taking shifts. By night, she entered rooms without visible addresses and translated conversations no one wanted recorded. Her university friends noticed first. Rachel Monroe cornered her after a seminar on 19th century exile literature. "You have missed every study session this month. I have been working. At what corporate translation? For whom a private firm?" Rachel looked through the tall windows toward the black sedan waiting at the curb. Private firms do not usually send armed drivers. Evelyn glanced outside. The driver kept both hands on the wheel, but the shape beneath his coat was unmistakable. He is security. For a translator. The clients are wealthy. That does not answer the question. Evelyn adjusted the strap of her bag. "I have to go." Rachel caught her arm. "You are disappearing." Evelyn pulled away more sharply than she intended. "I am paying for my mother's treatment." Rachel's expression softened. "That does not mean every price is worth paying." Evelyn looked toward the waiting car. "I do not have the luxury of deciding slowly." She left before Rachel could answer. Inside Dominic's world, hesitation was visible. So was weakness. Evelyn learned to read both. At a private club near the harbor, one man smiled before lying. Another became unusually polite before making a threat. A third refused to drink whenever he planned to betray someone. Dominic noticed how quickly she adapted. After a meeting with Ukrainian suppliers ended without violence, he poured her a glass of water. "You read rooms better than most of my men. Most of your men are too busy trying to look dangerous. And you are not. I already look harmless." Evelyn drank. "It gives me more time." Dominic studied her over the rim of his glass. "That answer concerns me." "It should." Mason Rourke heard the exchange from across the room. He had been with Dominic longer than anyone else at the table. He wore dark suits, spoke only when necessary, and watched Evelyn as though she were a crack spreading through a foundation. At first, Mason treated her like furniture. Then Dominic began asking for her interpretation before asking for his. The change was slight. Mason noticed every time. One evening, after Dominic stepped away to take a private call, Mason followed Evelyn into the corridor. "You have been here 5 weeks," he said. 6. Mason stopped. "That correction is exactly the problem." Evelyn faced him. What problem men spend years earning Dominic's trust? "I did not ask him to trust me." "No." Mason moved closer. "You made him curious." He smelled of expensive cologne and cigarettes. "Curiosity is temporary. Do not mistake it for protection." "I do not." "Good." His voice became quieter. "Because when his interest ends, you will know more than any temporary employee should." Evelyn held his gaze. "Is that a warning?" "It is professional advice. You do not seem generous enough to give advice." Mason's expression remained calm. "I am loyal to Dominic, to what he built." The distinction mattered. Evelyn stored it away. Mason walked past her without another word. Later that night, she mentioned the conversation to Dominic. He stood near the windows of his penthouse, removing his cufflinks. "Mason does not like change," he said. "He does not like me. That is not the same thing. It feels similar." Dominic placed the cufflinks on a side table. "He spent 15 years preventing threats before they reached me. Do I look like a threat?" Dominic's eyes moved over her face. "Yes." The answer silenced her. He stepped closer, but not close enough to touch. "You make people speak differently," he said. "Men explain themselves around you. They reveal things they hide from me. Because they fear you. Because they underestimate you." Evelyn looked toward the city. "Which do you do? I have not decided." Dominic began inviting her to places where no translation was required. At first, he always gave a reason. A Russian donor might attend. A foreign collector could arrive. An investor preferred someone who understood Slavic customs. Eventually, even the excuses disappeared. At a museum fundraiser, Evelyn wore a dark green dress she had chosen herself after refusing 3 garments sent by Dominic's assistant. Dominic waited at the bottom of a marble staircase. For a moment, he said nothing. Evelyn looked down at herself. "Is something wrong?" "No." "You are staring. I am aware. That is not an apology. I was not apologizing." He offered his arm. Evelyn looked at it. "Is this necessary?" "No." She took it anyway. They moved through a room filled with politicians, attorneys, donors, and people who smiled at Dominic while keeping careful distance from him. Evelyn watched him become someone else. He greeted a city councilman with warmth. He discussed restaurant openings with an investor. He spoke to a museum curator about 19th century painting with such precision that Evelyn forgot to watch the exits. They stopped before a winter landscape painted in muted gray. A frozen river divided the canvas. A single dark figure stood near the trees. "The artist was 23 when he painted this," Dominic said. Evelyn studied the empty sky. "It feels older. He had already buried 2 brothers. That explains the cold." "No." Dominic looked at the painting. "It explains why he noticed it." For 10 minutes he spoke without calculation. His hands moved when he described the brushwork. His face softened when he discussed light. The man feared across Boston disappeared. In his place stood someone Evelyn might have met in a library. Natalie Sloane approached carrying a champagne glass. She was elegant without appearing fragile, with dark hair pinned at the base of her neck and eyes that missed nothing. "You are Evelyn Carter," she said. Evelyn glanced at Dominic. "He tells people about me." "Dominic tells no one anything. That is why everyone listens when he does." A donor called Dominic away. Natalie watched him cross the room. "He used to paint." Evelyn turned. Dominic, before his father was killed. What happened after Natalie took a slow sip? Everyone around him decided grief should make him cruel. Did it? Natalie looked at Evelyn. Cruelty was a choice. Grief only made the choice easier. The words remained with Evelyn long after the fundraiser ended. In the car, Dominic asked what Natalie had said. "She told me you painted." His expression closed. "Natalie says many things." Was she lying? No. Why did you stop? Dominic looked through the window. Some lives leave room for art. Yours did not. My father died. There were debts. Men waiting to see if I was strong enough to replace him. You were young. I was old enough to understand what weakness caused. Evelyn studied his reflection in the glass. And what did strength cost? Dominic looked at her. More. The first Russian lesson began by accident. Dominic had an upcoming meeting with a businessman from St. Petersburg and insisted on delivering the opening greeting himself. He pronounced the same word incorrectly 3 times. Evelyn corrected him. He repeated it. Still wrong. You are placing the stress on the last syllable, she said. I am placing it where it belongs. No. You are placing it where you want it. Dominic tried again. Evelyn covered her mouth, but the laugh escaped. Silence filled the penthouse. 2 guards near the door looked away. Dominic stared at her. Evelyn lowered her hand. I apologize. No, you do not. Not entirely. A slow smile appeared. Then Dominic laughed. It was quieter than she expected. Almost young. "Teach me properly." He pushed aside security reports and shipping records on the dining table. Evelyn opened her notebook. "You need to start with the alphabet. I know the alphabet. You know how the letters look. That is different." For the next hour, Dominic Vale became a difficult student. He demanded explanations for every grammatical rule and became irritated whenever there was none. Why does the ending change? Because the noun changes case. Why? Because Russian enjoys punishing confidence. He looked at her. That explains your affection for it. The lessons continued twice a week. Sometimes they lasted 30 minutes. Sometimes they continued past midnight. Evelyn taught him formal greetings, old expressions, and the difference between words that meant nearly the same thing but carried entirely different emotions. Dominic learned quickly when he allowed himself to make mistakes. His frustration revealed a perfectionism that went far deeper than business. One evening he asked her to translate a lullaby. Evelyn recognized it immediately. "My grandmother sang this. My mother did too." Dominic spoke without looking at her. She was Russian-American. "My father met her in Brighton Beach." What happened? After they married, he decided the language made her sound like a servant. Evelyn closed the notebook. He forbade her to speak it in front of him, and when he was gone, she sang. Dominic stared at the untouched whiskey in his glass. "She believed I was too young to remember. But you did. Only pieces." He recited a line. The final word was wrong. Evelyn supplied the correct one. Dominic's expression changed. Something unguarded passed across his face, then vanished. "Do not look at me like that," he said. "Like what?" "Like you understand." "Maybe I do. That would be worse." During another lesson, Evelyn reached beneath a stack of papers for her notebook and found a small leather sketchbook. It slipped from the table and opened on the floor. Charcoal drawings filled the pages. Boston before sunrise, an empty train platform, a harbor covered in fog, a woman sitting beside a window with her face turned away. Evelyn touched the edge of one page. "These are yours." Dominic took the book from her. Embarrassment crossed his face so quickly that it startled her. "You were not meant to see them. You are good. That is irrelevant. You draw her often." Dominic looked at the woman by the window. "My mother. Do you remember her face? No." His thumb moved over the charcoal line. "I remember the way she waited for someone to let her leave." The sentence entered Evelyn slowly. She thought of the private car waiting wherever she went, the security guard outside her apartment, Dominic's assistant knowing her schedule before she did. She looked toward the windows. Did she ever leave Dominic closed the sketchbook? No. Neither of them spoke for a long time. A blizzard trapped Evelyn at the penthouse one Friday night. The roads disappeared beneath snow. Wind shook the glass high above the city. Dominic offered her a guest room. Evelyn refused to sleep. She sat in the kitchen wearing one of his sweaters over her dress while he made tea. "You own 3 restaurants," she said. "Why are you making it yourself?" "Because I do not keep staff here overnight. You keep armed guards. They cannot make tea." "I doubt they would admit that." Dominic set a cup before her. Without the suit jacket, he looked less untouchable. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms. A pale scar crossed one wrist. Evelyn wrapped both hands around the cup. "What did you want before all this? All what?" She gestured toward the city, the guards, and the hidden business beneath the legal one. "Before you became Dominic Vale." His mouth tightened. "I have always been Dominic Vale. That was not my question." He looked into his tea. "A professor, perhaps. Literature." "Yes." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You would terrify your students. They would submit assignments on time, and paint sometimes. What changed? My father died. You said that already. You want a better answer? I want the honest one. Dominic looked at her. I chose power because grief made helplessness unbearable. The words settled between them. He asked quietly, what did you want to translate novels? Teach literature. Maybe live somewhere with quiet mornings. What changed life became more expensive than dreams. Dominic's gaze moved to her mouth. He stood. Evelyn remained still as he came around the table. The kitchen seemed smaller with him beside her. He lifted one hand, then stopped before touching her face. She could feel the warmth of his fingers near her cheek. Tell me to step away, he said. Evelyn's breath caught. You usually do not ask permission. I am asking now. She should have answered. Instead, she looked into the eyes of a man who frightened entire rooms and saw that he was waiting. Dominic leaned closer. His phone rang. The sound cut through the moment. His expression hardened before he answered. He listened for less than 30 seconds. I will be there. When the call ended, the man in the kitchen had disappeared. Where are you going? Evelyn asked. Work. At 2 a.m. Some problems prefer darkness. The next afternoon, Claire noticed Dominic's sweater folded inside Evelyn's bag. This does not belong to you. Evelyn took it from her. It belongs to a client. A male client. Yes. Claire watched her too closely. Are you involved with him? No. The answer came quickly. Claire looked toward the driver waiting outside. Does he know that Evelyn folded the sweater again? It is not like that. What is it like I work for him? And he sends cars, clothes, and guards. The guards are because of the people we meet. Claire's hands tightened around the edge of the table. What kind of people Evelyn could not answer without lying? Claire saw the silence. No treatment is worth losing you. You are not losing me. You come home after midnight. You jump when phones ring. You look at every window before sitting down. I am tired. You are afraid. Evelyn turned away. Claire's voice softened. Whatever he is paying you, we can stop. And then, what we manage. We were not managing. We were together. The words struck a place Evelyn had been avoiding. She looked at the medication bottles beside the sink. You say that because you are not the one deciding whether you live. Claire's face changed. Evelyn wanted to pull the sentence back. It was already between them. She took her coat and left. Dominic found her later in the back of the sedan staring through the window. What happened? Nothing. You are a poor liar. So I have been told. He did not press her. That restraint felt more intimate than questions. 2 nights later, Dominic brought Evelyn to a warehouse near East Boston. He called it a routine translation assignment. The moment the steel door opened, Evelyn knew he had lied. A man knelt on the concrete floor. Blood ran from his mouth. Mason stood behind him, flexing one hand inside a brass grip. Evelyn stopped walking. This was not in the contract. Dominic's face remained unreadable. He stole from me. That does not answer why I am here. He speaks Russian. The kneeling man looked at Evelyn with desperate recognition. Dominic spoke calmly. Tell him he has one chance to return what he took. Evelyn translated. The man answered rapidly. His daughter needed surgery. He had taken the money to pay a doctor. He planned to return everything before anyone noticed. Evelyn felt the floor shift beneath her. Dominic asked, What did he say? She looked at the bleeding man, then at Dominic. He wants 48 hours. That is not what I asked. He says he can return everything in 48 hours. Mason laughed. He is begging. Evelyn ignored him. Dominic's voice lowered. Translate my exact words. He looked at the man on the floor. He returns the money tonight or his family identifies his body tomorrow. The man began to shake. Evelyn heard Claire's voice in the kitchen. We were together. She translated slowly. You have 48 hours. Return everything and no one touches your family. The man nodded frantically. Dominic stared at her. He knew. Mason knew too. Dominic dismissed the room with one look. Outside, snow had begun to fall. Dominic followed Evelyn into the cold. You changed my words. I prevented a murder. You delayed a decision. You were going to kill him for using money to save his daughter. He stole from me, so did I. Dominic went still. The $5,000 bought more than service in Russian. It bought access to me when I was desperate. That was a choice. So was his. Dominic stepped closer. You cannot decide which of my orders deserve to survive. I will not become your voice when your voice destroys people. Then do not stand beside me when I speak. The words hurt more than Evelyn expected. She looked at him. Is that dismissal? Dominic's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, Mason came through the warehouse door. He should have been dealt with immediately. Dominic did not look away from Evelyn. He has 48 hours. Mason stopped. You gave him time. I gave him terms. Because she changed your words. Dominic turned slowly. Because I made a decision. Mason's face became still. The men will hear about this. Then make certain they hear it correctly. For the first time, Evelyn saw open resentment in Mason's eyes. The money was returned the following evening. No one died. Evelyn believed mercy had proven stronger than fear. Mason saw something else. Dominic Vale had changed an order because a waitress had looked at him and said no. At the next strategy meeting, Dominic asked Evelyn whether a Russian partner's promise sounded sincere. Mason answered before she could. It does not matter how it sounds. The numbers are correct. Dominic looked at Evelyn. What do you think? The numbers were prepared before the meeting. His promise was not. Dominic nodded. Then we wait. Mason closed the folder in front of him. Afterward, he followed Dominic into the adjoining office. Evelyn remained outside gathering her notes. The door did not close completely. She is teaching everyone that your decisions can be negotiated, Mason said. Dominic's reply was quiet. Only weak decisions fear questions. She knows too much. So do you. I earned that knowledge. Dominic's voice hardened. And now you are questioning what I do with mine. Silence followed. Evelyn moved away before either man discovered her listening. When she returned home that night, a brown package rested outside her apartment door. There was no courier label, no sender. The security guard downstairs claimed he had seen no one enter the building. Claire was asleep. Evelyn carried the package into the kitchen and locked the door. Inside were confidential shipping manifests. Vale Maritime seals appeared on every page. Names, account numbers, ports, storage facilities, insurance records, and customs codes connected Dominic's legal companies to crimes serious enough to bury everyone involved. A note rested on top. Translate everything. Do not contact Mr. Vale. Evelyn read the first page twice. Then she noticed the Russian phrasing. The sentences were technically correct, but several endings were wrong in a way no native speaker would choose by accident. She wrote down the misplaced letters. They formed a number, a federal case number. Evelyn looked toward the dark window. Across the street, a car waited beneath a broken streetlight with its engine running. Her phone vibrated on the table. Dominic Vale. She watched the name glow against the screen. Then she found the second pattern hidden inside the errors. A date. 3 days from now. The phone continued ringing. Evelyn did not answer. The phone stopped ringing. For several seconds, Evelyn remained motionless at the kitchen table. The dark car across the street did not move. Its engine sent a thin cloud of exhaust into the freezing air. No headlights. No visible driver. Only the low vibration of a machine waiting for permission. Her phone lit again. Where are you? Dominic never asked questions he could answer himself. That meant he either did not know where she was or he wanted to hear what she would tell him. Evelyn turned the documents over one by one. The manifests appeared legitimate at first glance. Shipping dates, customs stamps, container numbers, insurance records, payments routed through construction firms, restaurants, galleries, and maritime contractors. The deeper she read, the more deliberate the evidence became. Every page connected Vale Maritime to an illegal operation, weapons hidden beneath imported stone, money transferred through shell companies, cargo removed before federal inspection. Payments made to officials in Boston, Montreal, and New York. Several English translations had already been prepared. Blank signature lines waited beneath them. Her name had been typed at the bottom. Evelyn Carter, certified linguistic consultant. She stared at the words until they lost their shape. Someone expected her to complete the translation, sign the pages, and become part of the evidence. A frightened student recruited by a crime boss, a translator carrying information between criminal groups, a convenient witness who could disappear before explaining herself. Her fingerprints were already on the first page. Evelyn forced herself to breathe. She photographed every document with her phone. Then she placed the originals inside a plastic bag and carried them into her bedroom. Claire was asleep in the next room. The soft, mechanical rhythm of her breathing drifted through the wall. Evelyn knelt beside the bed and lifted a loose floorboard. Years earlier, Claire had hidden emergency cash there after Evelyn's father died. Most of it had disappeared into rent and medical bills before Evelyn was old enough to understand what an emergency truly cost. She slid the documents into the hollow space. The board settled back into place. Her phone vibrated again. Dominic. She did not answer. Instead, she copied the hidden letters from the Russian text into her notebook. The first pattern formed the federal case number. The second formed the date. 3 days. Someone wanted the documents in government hands within 3 days, with Evelyn's name attached. She tore the page from the notebook and folded it into the lining of her boot. Then she changed clothes, placed an empty folder inside her bag, and left the apartment. The security guard in the lobby straightened when he saw her. Mr. Vale called twice. "I know. He asked me to bring you to the office." Evelyn looked through the glass doors. The car beneath the broken streetlight had disappeared. Did he send a package upstairs? The guard's expression did not change. What package? She watched his eyes. No recognition, no fear, no irritation. Either he truly knew nothing, or he had been trained better than she could read. Nothing she said. The ride downtown passed in silence. Freezing rain coated the windows. Evelyn watched every turn, memorizing streets she had traveled dozens of times without once considering that she might need to escape them. The sedan entered the underground garage beneath the Vale building. The private elevator stood open. No assistant waited on the top floor. Most of the office lights were dark. A cleaning cart sat abandoned near the conference room. The wheels were wet as though someone had rolled it in from outside. Evelyn stepped into the corridor. The building hummed around her. Ventilation, electricity, the distant movement of an elevator several floors below. Dominic's office door was unlocked. A single lamp burned on his desk. He was not there. Evelyn placed the empty folder beside his computer. She looked at the wall calendar near the windows. No meeting had been scheduled that evening. No urgent appointment. Nothing that explained why he had called her repeatedly. She opened the top drawer. Travel records, duplicate keys. A sealed envelope marked for his attorney. No reference to the documents. She opened a second drawer. A voice came from the adjoining room. "Mason." Evelyn froze. The connecting door stood open less than an inch. Light cut through the narrow space. Mason spoke quietly. "Once she translates the documents, her name belongs to the case." A pause followed. He was listening to someone on the phone. "No, Dominic does not know." Evelyn moved closer. The carpet absorbed her steps. "The government gets a direct link to the organization. The girl gives them language they can understand." Another pause. Mason's voice became colder. She disappears before she reaches a courtroom. The office seemed to tilt. Evelyn reached into her bag and activated the recording function on her phone. Mason continued. She has become a liability. Dominic brings her into meetings she has no business hearing. He changes decisions after she speaks. A chair creaked. He has forgotten what sentiment costs. Evelyn held the phone closer to the narrow opening. No, I will handle her myself. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned. Dominic stood in the office doorway. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. A thin line of water ran from his hair to his collar. His expression went still when he saw her beside the open desk. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then his eyes dropped to the drawer. "What are you doing?" Evelyn stopped the recording. "I was looking for you. Behind my desk, I needed to check your schedule." Dominic closed the office door behind him. His right hand remained near his coat. Why Evelyn looked toward the adjoining room. Mason had stopped speaking. The silence on the other side of the door felt alive. Dominic followed her gaze. Then he looked at her again. "Answer me." Evelyn picked up the empty folder and opened it. There were documents inside this when it arrived at my apartment. Dominic did not touch the folder. What documents? Shipping manifests, account numbers, customs records, Russian text with deliberate errors. His face revealed nothing. Where are they safe? Where I will tell you when I know who sent them. Dominic's eyes hardened. You entered my private office, opened my records, and hid documents connected to my company. Yes, and now you are asking me to trust you. No. Evelyn held his gaze. I am asking you to listen. The adjoining door opened. Mason stepped into the office. His jacket was buttoned. His phone was no longer visible. What is happening? Evelyn looked at him. Mason returned her stare with mild concern. Too mild. Dominic spoke without taking his eyes from Evelyn. Did you send documents to her apartment? Mason's eyebrows lifted. No. She says someone did. What kind of documents? Evelyn watched his face. Shipping manifests. Concern deepened with perfect control. You brought them here, no. Something sharpened in his gaze. Only for a fraction of a second. Then he turned to Dominic. This could be an attempt to compromise the building. It could, Dominic said. We should take her phone and search the apartment. Evelyn stepped back. Dominic raised one hand. Mason stopped. Leave us. Mason stared at him. You cannot be serious. Leave. For the first time, open anger entered Mason's face. He looked at Evelyn once more. There was no surprise in his eyes, only calculation. Then he walked out. The office door closed behind him. Dominic waited until the elevator bell sounded in the distance. Show me what you recorded. Evelyn unlocked her phone. Mason's voice filled the office. Once she translates the documents, her name belongs to the case. The government gets a direct link to the organization. The girl disappears before she reaches a courtroom. Dominic listened without moving. When the recording ended, he held out his hand. Evelyn gave him the phone. He played it again. His expression changed slowly. Not shock. Recognition. Several unexplained events had finally arranged themselves into one shape. Where are the documents? He asked. At my apartment. Who else knows? No one. Your mother. She was asleep. The security team I asked about the package. The guard claimed he knew nothing. Dominic picked up the office phone and called a number from memory. Lock down the building. No one leaves without my approval. He ended the call and made another. Replace the team at the Carter apartment. Quietly. Evelyn stepped closer. Do not frighten my mother. Dominic looked at her. If Mason sent those documents, your mother is already in danger. The words turned her stomach cold. I need to go home. No, she is alone. She will not remain alone. You are not moving her without me. This is not a negotiation." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "It becomes one when you involve my family." Anger flashed across Dominic's face. Then it disappeared beneath control. He reached for his coat. "We go together?" The elevator took too long. Dominic stood beside Evelyn without speaking. Violence gathered beneath his silence like pressure behind glass. When the doors opened into the garage, 4 armed men were waiting. Mason was not among them. Dominic gave orders in a voice so calm that Evelyn barely recognized the danger inside it. 2 men would secure Claire. One would inspect the apartment. Another would trace the package. Dominic took the driver's seat himself. Evelyn climbed in beside him. The city moved past in blurred lights. "You believed me quickly," she said. "I believed the recording. That is not the same thing. No, you thought I might be part of it." Dominic kept his eyes on the road. "And if I had been," his hands tightened around the wheel, "you would not be sitting beside me." Evelyn looked out the window. The honesty should have frightened her. Instead, it made the space between them feel painfully clear. "Mason said you have become sentimental. Mason has always confused restraint with weakness. He thinks I changed you." Dominic turned onto the expressway. "Have you, Evelyn, looked at him?" He did not return her gaze. "I do not know." His voice lowered. "That answer is more dangerous than yes." At the apartment, 2 of Dominic's men stood in the hallway. Claire sat at the kitchen table wearing her robe, furious and frightened. She looked from Evelyn to Dominic. "Your people entered my home." Dominic removed his coat. "My apologies. I did not ask for an apology." "No." Claire's eyes moved over him. "You are the employer." Dominic said nothing. The silence answered. Claire looked at Evelyn. What happened? Evelyn knelt beside her chair. "Someone sent documents here. They may have been trying to involve me in something illegal. May have been. I did not sign anything." Claire glanced at Dominic. "Is my daughter in danger because of you?" Dominic met her gaze. "Yes." Evelyn looked up sharply. Claire did not. "Can you remove the danger?" Dominic paused. "I intend to. That is not what I asked." For the first time, Evelyn saw where she had learned to challenge powerful men. Dominic answered more carefully. "I can protect her while I identify the source." Claire's face remained hard. After Dominic said nothing else, she looked at Evelyn. "You cannot keep calling this a job. Not now, Mom. There is never a good time for the truth when the truth is ugly." Dominic's men removed the documents from beneath the floorboard. They photographed the packaging, inspected the locks, and reviewed the hallway cameras. The recording system had been disabled for 17 minutes during the delivery. Professional. Planned. Dominic examined the manifests at the kitchen table. Evelyn showed him the hidden case number and date. He read the pages twice. "These records are real," he said. Evelyn felt the air change. "All of them, most. What does that mean?" Someone combined legitimate company records with operations that should never appear together. Mason had access. He had access to everything. Claire heard the answer. Her face lost color. Evelyn moved between her and the documents. Dominic gathered the pages. "You and your mother are leaving tonight." Claire stood. "I am not going anywhere with you." Dominic looked at Evelyn. "Convince her." "No." His eyes narrowed. Evelyn rose. "You do not issue orders in this apartment. A man who worked beside me for 15 years may be trying to frame you and destroy me. He knows where you live. He knows your mother's hospital. He knows your class schedule." Claire turned toward Evelyn. "You said the driver was for wealthy clients." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. "I lied. Yes, I was trying to protect you. Claire's voice trembled, from the truth or from the choice I would make if I knew it. The question struck deeper than Evelyn expected. Dominic looked away, offering privacy without leaving. Claire touched Evelyn's face. You do not save someone by removing their right to say no. Evelyn swallowed. I know. No. Claire's hand remained against her cheek. You are learning. Dominic arranged for Claire to be moved to a private medical facility under another name. She agreed only after Evelyn promised to visit the next morning. Before leaving, Claire looked at Dominic. If anything happens to her, I do not care how many men fear you. Dominic met her eyes. You will not need to. The confidence in his voice should have reassured Evelyn. It did not. By midnight, Dominic had turned a private conference room into a command center. Security footage covered one wall. Bank records, phone logs, and shipping schedules covered the table. Evelyn sat across from him while his remaining trusted men traced Mason's movements. Mason had left the office but had not gone home. His phone had gone dark near the harbor. 2 accounts connected to him had been emptied within the hour. A third account in Montreal showed payments dating back almost 4 years. Dominic studied the transactions. He planned for exposure. How long months? Evelyn looked at the screen showing Mason entering warehouses, restaurants, and private meetings. You trusted him? Dominic's face remained still. He stood beside me when I had nothing. That does not answer whether you trusted him. Dominic looked at her. Yes. The word sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Evelyn reached for one of the manifests. Dominic caught her wrist. Do not touch them. She looked at his hand around her skin. He released her immediately. Your fingerprints are already on the first set. Do not give anyone more. You believe they will reach the government. I believe Mason built more than one path. What do you plan to do? Let him believe the first plan worked. Dominic placed copies of the documents on the table. Evelyn understood before he explained. You want me to complete the translations. False translations, and Mason will recognize the changes. Yes. If he tries to recover them, you follow him. Yes, you are using me as bait. I will have men watching you. The same way you had men watching my apartment. Dominic's jaw tightened. He compromised the team. That does not make the result different. You are safer if Mason believes you know nothing. I am safer if I am allowed to make decisions about my own life. This is not about control. It always becomes about control with you. Dominic stood. I am trying to keep you alive, and I am trying to remain someone worth keeping alive. The room went silent. The men around them looked away. Evelyn lowered her voice. You cannot protect me by becoming another person I need protection from. The words landed. Dominic dismissed everyone with a glance. When the doors closed, he stepped closer. You think working with me has changed you? I translated threats. I watched a man bleed. I accepted money I knew was dirty. I lied to my mother every day. You did what you needed to do. That is what every dangerous person says before they stop recognizing themselves. Dominic looked at her for a long time. Then he placed the false documents on the table. You may leave the building. You may return to class. You may see your mother. Evelyn waited. You will have protection. That part is not optional. No. She nearly argued. Then she saw the exhaustion beneath his control. Fine. Dominic stepped back. But you do not contact Mason. I was not planning to. If he approaches you, you do exactly what he asks until my men intervene. You expect me to trust them. I expect you to survive long enough to be angry with me later. The sentence remained between them. Over the next 2 days, Evelyn followed her normal routine. Hospital in the morning, university in the afternoon, Vale offices in the evening. She translated the false manifests in a secure room while cameras recorded every movement. Dominic remained distant. He spoke only about the operation. No Russian lessons, no quiet tea, no moments in which he seemed like anyone other than the man in control. Mason did not appear. His silence became its own threat. Evelyn knew Dominic had assigned 2 guards to follow her. She also knew protection could fail. So she created a second plan. Using a university computer, she encrypted photographs of the real documents, the recording of Mason's call, and a written account of everything that had happened since the night at the Marlowe. She scheduled the file to send automatically to Professor Henry Caldwell if she failed to log into her university account twice in succession. Years earlier, Professor Caldwell had worked as a linguistic analyst on federal organized crime investigations. He rarely spoke about it, but once during a lecture he had said that coded language was most dangerous when everyone pretended it was only language. Evelyn did not know what he could do with the information. She only knew he existed outside Dominic's world. The file was not loyalty. It was not betrayal. It was an exit. On the 3rd evening, Evelyn visited the university library. She chose a table near the front windows where Dominic's guards could see her from the street. For 2 hours, she worked through an essay on exile and identity. At 9:30, she packed her books. The guard's car remained across the street. Freezing wind cut between the buildings when she stepped outside. A dark sedan pulled to the curb. The rear door opened. Mason sat inside. A gun rested against his thigh. "Get in." Evelyn stopped. Across the street, Dominic's guards remained in their car. Neither moved. Mason followed her gaze. "They will not help you." Evelyn looked more carefully. The driver's seat was empty. Both guards were slumped in the back. She could not tell whether they were alive. Mason opened his coat enough to show the gun clearly. "Get in, Evelyn." Students moved behind the library windows. Campus security stood near the front desk. Mason smiled. "Call for help and your mother's medical transfer becomes permanent in a way you will not appreciate." Evelyn entered the car. The door locked. Mason took her phone. "You disappoint me. I did not know you cared. I told Dominic you were dangerous." "You were right." Mason struck her across the face. Pain flashed behind her eyes. "Confidence has made you careless." Evelyn tasted blood. "No. Your jealousy made you predictable." His expression hardened. The car moved south through the city. Evelyn watched street signs, bridges, and changes in the road surface. She counted turns. She listened to the sound of trains. The driver crossed 2 sets of tracks, turned near the water, and passed beneath an elevated roadway. Industrial Harbor, a warehouse district. Mason searched her bag but missed the small recorder sewn into the lining. Evelyn pressed the hidden button with her thumb. A red light flashed once beneath the fabric. Mason leaned back. "You know what I hate most about you? That I correct your grammar. You believe Dominic sees something special. I believe you do." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is about you? I think you spent 15 years standing beside a throne and began believing it belonged to you." Mason's face became cold. "You know nothing about what I built. I know you needed him powerful enough to protect you and damaged enough to depend on you." The car turned sharply. Mason reached across and closed one hand around her throat. Evelyn forced herself not to fight. "You speak too much. You should have kidnapped a quieter translator." He released her. The warehouse stood near the water, abandoned except for 2 vehicles and dim lights behind dirty windows. Mason pulled Evelyn from the car. Inside, the air smelled of oil dust and cold metal. Empty containers formed narrow corridors across the concrete floor. 4 armed men waited near an office at the far end. Mason forced Evelyn into a chair. He placed the false translations on the desk. "Where are the originals with Dominic?" Mason smiled. No, he pressed the gun against her ribs. Dominic believes he destroyed every copy. You are too intelligent to leave yourself unprotected. Evelyn looked at the papers. So you admit you sent them, I admit nothing. You sent federal evidence to my home. You typed my name beneath it. You expected me to sign. I expected desperation to make you obedient. You misunderstood what desperation does. It makes people choose survival. It makes people dangerous. His smile faded. Where are the copies? Evelyn remained silent. Mason struck her. The chair tipped sideways. She hit the floor hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Mason pulled her upright by the hair. Dominic is already finished. His accounts are exposed. His partners are moving against him. The government wants a witness it can understand. And you plan to give them one. I plan to give them you. You think they will believe I controlled his organization? They will believe you translated every agreement. They will believe you carried information between groups. They will believe whatever the documents prove. And after they arrest me, Mason's voice softened. You will never reach a courtroom. There it was, the simple center of his plan. Not justice, not loyalty, erasure. Mason moved toward the office window. Dominic could have survived if he remained focused. Then you appeared. He trusted you for 15 years. He needed me for 15 years. You never learned the difference. Mason turned. I taught him how to rule. No, you taught him how to fear losing control. A sound came from outside. Metal groaned. Mason's men raised their weapons. The warehouse doors opened. Dominic entered alone. Snow blew in behind him. He wore a black overcoat over his suit. His hands were visible. 2 of his men appeared in the shadows near the entrance. Mason pressed the gun against Evelyn's side. Dominic stopped. His eyes moved over her bruised face. Then they settled on Mason. 15 years, Dominic said. And this is how you choose to leave. Mason laughed once. You left first. I am standing here. You stopped listening. You let her question you in front of men who once feared your silence. Dominic's face remained calm. You mistook fear for loyalty. It built everything you own. No, it built everything you tried to steal. Mason's expression shifted. Dominic continued. The accounts in Montreal, the money routed through Rourke Logistics, the payments from federal contacts, the shipping routes you sold to rivals. Shock broke through Mason's control. You checked the accounts. I checked everything. After she whispered in your ear. After you sent evidence to her home. Mason looked at Evelyn. That moment of distraction was enough. She drove her elbow into his stomach. Mason folded forward. Evelyn dropped to the floor and rolled behind a steel container. Gunfire erupted. The sound tore through the warehouse. Bullets struck metal, sending sparks through the darkness. Dominic moved behind a support column. His men returned fire from the entrance. Mason shouted orders. Evelyn crawled between the containers, keeping her body low. Her hands shook violently. She forced herself to breathe. A man appeared at the end of the row. Evelyn grabbed a loose metal bar and struck his knee. He fell. The gun slid across the floor. She kicked it beneath a container and ran. A bullet struck the wall beside her face. Fragments of concrete cut her cheek. She reached a maintenance corridor. The exit door was locked. Footsteps approached behind her. Evelyn pulled at the handle again. Nothing. She searched the floor and found a fallen phone near one of Mason's men. The screen was cracked but active. She called emergency services. "What is your location?" the operator asked. Evelyn whispered the warehouse address from memory. Gunfire drowned out the response. She dropped the phone and moved just before a bullet struck the wall. More men entered through a side-loading door. Dominic's 2 guards were forced deeper into the warehouse. The gunfight became closer and less controlled. Evelyn found herself trapped between 2 rows of containers. A shot grazed her upper arm. Heat tore through her skin. She pressed one hand against the wound and kept moving, her vision blurred. At the end of the row, Mason stepped into view. Blood darkened his shirt where she had struck him. He raised the gun. "You should have signed the documents." Evelyn backed away. "You should have learned Russian." Mason frowned. Evelyn saw movement behind the next container. "Dominic." She shouted a warning in Russian. Dominic understood. He fired. The bullet struck Mason in the shoulder. Mason spun and fired blindly. Dominic emerged from cover. The two men faced each other across the narrow aisle. Mason laughed through the pain. "She made you weak." Dominic aimed at his chest. "No." His eyes moved briefly to Evelyn. She made weakness harder to hide. Mason fired. Dominic fired at the same moment. Mason collapsed against the container and slid to the floor. His weapon fell from his hand. Dominic approached slowly. Mason looked up at the man he had served for 15 years. "I built your throne." Dominic stood over him. "You stood beside it." Mason's breathing became shallow. "You will lose everything." Dominic's face did not change. "Then there will be nothing left for men like you to steal." Mason's eyes went still. Sirens sounded in the distance. Dominic crossed the aisle toward Evelyn. She leaned against the wall, blood running between her fingers. His control broke for 1 second. He reached her and pressed his hand over the wound. "We need to move." "What about the documents Mason's office contained? Files, phones, and account records. Evidence enough to destroy what remained of Dominic's organization." Police lights flashed through the warehouse windows. One of his men shouted that they had less than a minute. Dominic slid one arm beneath Evelyn's knees and lifted her. "You are leaving everything," she whispered. "Not everything." He carried her through a rear loading door. Cold air struck her face. A car waited in the alley. Dominic placed her inside and climbed behind the wheel. He drove without headlights until they reached the highway. Evelyn's head rested against the seat. Blood spread across the sleeve of her coat. Dominic kept one hand on the wheel and the other pressed against her arm. "Stay awake. I am awake. Tell me something in Russian." She tried to laugh. "You still need lessons." "Yes." Evelyn closed her eyes. Dominic tightened his hand over the wound. "Open them." She did. His face was pale beneath the passing streetlights. "Mason is dead," she said. "Yes." "Did you kill him because he betrayed you?" Dominic looked at the road. "No." Evelyn understood the answer. It frightened her more than if he had said yes. The city blurred beyond the windows as he drove toward a private clinic. One hand remained over her wound as though force alone could keep her from slipping away. Evelyn watched the rhythm of the streetlights. White. Darkness. White again. Her arm burned with every movement of the car. Blood had soaked through Dominic's handkerchief and into the sleeve of her coat. Her cheek stung where the concrete had cut it, but the pain felt distant compared with the weight inside her chest. Mason was dead. Dominic had killed him, not because Mason betrayed the organization, because Mason hurt her. Evelyn turned toward him. A thin line of blood marked Dominic's temple. He had not noticed it. "Where are we going?" "To a doctor. A hospital would be closer. A hospital asks questions before treating gunshot wounds. It was a graze. You are still bleeding. So are you." Dominic glanced at the blood on his cuff. "It is not mine." That answer made Evelyn close her eyes. His hand tightened over her arm. "Stay with me." "I am not going anywhere." "You have already said that once tonight." She opened her eyes again. The road narrowed. Downtown disappeared behind them. They entered a quiet neighborhood where brick houses stood behind iron gates. Dominic pulled into an underground garage beneath a medical building with no sign. A man in blue scrubs waited beside an open door. He took one look at Evelyn and called for a gurney. Dominic lifted her before anyone could bring it. "I can walk," she whispered. "No." "You enjoy that word." "Tonight I do." The doctor led them through a private corridor into a treatment room. Two nurses cut away Evelyn's sleeve. Dominic stood near the wall while the doctor examined the wound. The bullet passed across the surface, he said. No bone damage. She has lost blood, but she will not need a transfusion. Evelyn looked at Dominic. He did not relax. The doctor checked the bruising along her ribs and the swelling near her temple. Possible concussion. 2 cracked ribs. She needs imaging. Dominic nodded. The doctor turned to him. You need treatment too. I am fine. You are bleeding. It is not mine. Evelyn almost laughed. The sound became a gasp when the nurse pressed near her ribs. Dominic moved forward. Careful. The nurse looked up at him, annoyed rather than afraid. If you want her treated, let me treat her. Dominic stopped. Evelyn watched him step back. She had seen men obey him without question. Watching him accept an order from a nurse felt stranger than the pain medication entering her arm. As the room softened, Dominic sat beside the bed. His hands were clean now, but blood remained beneath one fingernail. Is my mother safe? Evelyn asked. Yes. Are you sure I moved her before Mason could reach her? We're a private wing at the medical center. Can I call her when you wake? Evelyn stared at him. You left the documents. Yes. The police will find them. Yes. They will connect them to you. Probably. You spent years building everything they can use against you. Dominic looked at her bandaged arm. Tonight I had a different priority. Evelyn wanted to ask what that made her. The medicine reached her before the question did. When Evelyn woke, gray morning light filled the treatment room. Dominic was still there. He sat beside the window with his coat folded across his knees. His shirt was wrinkled and dried blood darkened one cuff. His head rested against the wall, but his eyes opened the moment she moved. You sleep like a man expecting an attack, Evelyn whispered. I usually am. Her arm throbbed beneath the bandage. Every breath pulled at her bruised ribs. How long? 6 hours. My mother. Dominic handed her a phone. Claire answered on the first ring. Evelyn. Her voice broke around the name. I'm all right. Where are you? At a clinic. What happened? Evelyn looked at Dominic. He turned toward the window, giving her privacy without leaving. I was hurt. How I can't explain it over the phone. Try. Mom. Do not ask me to be calm after armed men moved me from my hospital room and refused to tell me where my daughter was. Evelyn closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Are you safe? Her gaze moved to Dominic again. He stood with his back to her, but his reflection was visible in the dark glass. He looked exhausted. Dangerous. Alone. I'm alive. That was not my question. No, Evelyn said quietly. It wasn't. Claire's silence carried more fear than anger. I'm coming to you. You can't. Then I am finished listening to people who tell me what I cannot do. The call ended. Dominic remained facing the window. She will find us, Evelyn said. Yes. You sound certain. She is your mother. The doctor discharged Evelyn late that afternoon. Instead of returning to Boston, Dominic drove north. The city gave way to smaller towns, then frozen fields and dark stands of pine. Snow clung to the branches. The sky lowered until it seemed close enough to touch. Evelyn sat wrapped in Dominic's coat, her injured arm secured against her body. Where are we going? A safe house. You said my apartment was safe. I was wrong. The admission startled her. Dominic kept his eyes on the road. How far Lake Winnipesaukee? That is not Boston. That is the point. Evelyn shifted and winced. Dominic noticed. Do you need more medication? I need to know whether I am being protected or kidnapped. His hands tightened around the wheel. You were almost killed last night. That does not answer me. You are going somewhere Mason did not know about. Do I have a choice? Dominic said nothing. Evelyn turned toward the window. Then call it what it is. A mile passed before he answered. You are under my protection until I know who else Mason was working with. Protection usually allows the protected person to leave, not when leaving gets them killed. So I am a prisoner. Dominic glanced at her. No. Can I go home? No. Can I return to class? No. Can I tell my mother where I am? Not yet. Evelyn looked back at the road. That sounds like a prison. The lake house stood at the end of a private road surrounded by bare woods. It was large without being ornate, built from dark stone and cedar. Wide windows overlooked a frozen lake. 3 guards waited outside. 2 more stood inside. Dominic led Evelyn to a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Fresh clothes waited in the closet. Medicine and water had been placed beside the bed. Evelyn tested the windows. They opened only a few inches. She examined the bedroom door. It did not lock from the outside. That felt deliberate. Dominic remained in the doorway. You need rest. I need my phone. It is being replaced. Mason had access to the old one. Can the police track yours? Probably. Then why keep it? Because I need them to know where I am not. Evelyn looked at him. Is that supposed to make sense? Not to you. She sat carefully on the bed. That phrase has become convenient. Dominic's expression tightened. I have men checking Mason's accounts. Others are tracing his federal contacts. Half my organization may be compromised. I cannot explain every decision while I make it. You do not have to explain every decision. What do you want? One decision that belongs to me. Dominic stood very still. Evelyn met his eyes. Close the door when you leave. He did. For 2 days, Evelyn remained in the bedroom. She slept in short fragments. Every loud sound became gunfire. Every footstep in the hallway became Mason. When she closed her eyes, she saw sparks flying from steel. She saw Mason raising his weapon. She saw Dominic standing over his body. At night, the ice cracked across the lake. The sound tore Evelyn from sleep. She reached for a weapon that was not there and struck the lamp from the bedside table. The door opened. Dominic stopped in the entrance. He did not come closer. Evelyn sat against the headboard, breathing too quickly. Moonlight spread across the broken glass. I heard the warehouse, she said. Dominic lowered himself into a chair across the room. His hands rested open on his knees. It was the lake. I know that now. He waited. Evelyn pressed her good hand against her ribs. Do you regret killing him? No. The answer came without hesitation. That should frighten you, Dominic said. It does. Then why are you still here? Because I cannot leave. That is not what I asked. Evelyn looked at him. Fear and love are not opposites. Something moved in his face. What are you asking? What are you capable of doing for me? Anything. That is the wrong answer. Dominic leaned back slowly. I would have killed every man in that warehouse to reach you. I know. I would do it again. I know. Then tell me the correct answer. Evelyn's voice softened. The correct answer is that there are things you should refuse to become even for someone you love. Dominic looked toward the shattered lamp. I stopped believing that a long time ago. And that is why your protection feels like another threat. The next afternoon, Claire arrived. She crossed the entrance hall without greeting Dominic and climbed the stairs before a guard could offer assistance. When she entered the bedroom, Evelyn stood too quickly. Pain folded her forward. Claire caught her. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Claire touched the bruise along Evelyn's cheek. "Tell me everything." Evelyn did. She began with the $5,000 challenge at the Marlowe. She told Claire about the contract, the harbor meetings, the bleeding man in the warehouse Mason's package, the recording, the kidnapping, and the gunfire. She did not soften Dominic's role. She did not soften her own. Claire listened without interruption. When Evelyn finished, Claire sat beside her. "I would rather have faced my illness honestly than watch you become a stranger to save me." Evelyn stared at the floor. "I thought I could keep both. Keep what you alive. Keep myself." Claire's eyes filled. "You were never responsible for buying my life. The hospital made it feel that way. The hospital gave us an impossible bill. Dominic gave you a dangerous answer. Neither one had the right to turn my life into your debt." Evelyn lowered her head. Claire pulled her close. The movement hurt Evelyn's ribs, but she did not let go. Later, Claire found Dominic standing alone in the downstairs study. Snow moved beyond the windows in slow white sheets. "You gave my daughter hope when she needed it," Claire said. Dominic remained beside the fireplace. "Then you made yourself the price. I never forced her to stay. You made leaving dangerous." He did not deny it. Claire studied him. "You love her." His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "That does not make you safe." "No." "Does she know no?" "Good." Dominic looked at her. Claire's voice remained steady. "Love should not become another debt she has to repay." A black vehicle arrived before sunset. Natalie Sloan stepped into the house carrying a leather case. Dominic led her into the dining room. Evelyn and Claire joined them. Natalie placed several folders on the table. "Mason was not only stealing from you," she said. "He was selling access." To whom Dominic asked. "Rival organizations, customs officials, 2 federal contacts who believed they could control the evidence before it became public." She opened the first folder. Bank records linked Mason to offshore accounts. The second contained photographs of meetings with officials. The third held copies of communications between Vale employees and international brokers. Dominic read in silence. "How did you get these? My late husband spent years documenting the people who used your organization without your knowledge." Dominic looked up. "Without my knowledge does not mean without my responsibility." Natalie held his gaze. "No, it does not." She placed one final document in front of him. "The government wants the officials and international partners above you. They want the network more than they want a war through Boston. What are they offering?" "Not freedom." Dominic's mouth hardened. Natalie continued. "You dismantle the criminal operations. You surrender illegal assets. You identify corrupt officials and testify against the international partners. You plead guilty and accept prison." Claire watched Dominic carefully. "And Evelyn?" he asked. "Conditional immunity in exchange for complete cooperation. Her mother's medical trust remains protected if it can be separated from criminal funds." Dominic looked at Evelyn. She did not look away. "How many years?" he asked. "Unknown. Cooperation could reduce the sentence. And the legitimate companies, they may survive under independent control. Hundreds of employees depend on them." Evelyn spoke quietly. "People depending on you does not make the system clean." Dominic turned toward her. "I built livelihoods. You built dependency and called it loyalty." His eyes darkened. "You think surrender protects everyone?" "No." "Then what does it do?" "It stops you from choosing who pays for your survival." Dominic stood and walked to the windows. The frozen lake stretched into the darkness. I could still leave the country. Natalie closed the case. "Yes, I could move enough money to disappear." "Yes. Then why are you here?" Because you asked for a way out years ago and refused it when the cost became real. Dominic turned. I never asked you for anything. You asked every time you painted a door and left it open. Silence filled the room. The next morning, Dominic summoned an attorney and an independent trustee. By afternoon, Claire's medical fund no longer belonged to him. He brought the signed transfer documents to Evelyn's room. She read every page. The trust continues whether you work for me, testify against me, or never speak to me again, he said. Evelyn looked at his signature. Thank you. Do not thank me for returning something I should never have controlled. She closed the folder. For the first time, his protection did not require her presence. A low vibration moved through the windows. Dominic looked toward the lake. Helicopters appeared above the trees. 3 dark shapes crossed the frozen water. Guards shouted from downstairs. Federal vehicles broke through the gate. Natalie stood in the hallway. They moved faster than expected. Dominic reached for Evelyn's coat. We leave. Agents breached the front entrance as he led Evelyn through the cellar. Behind a wine rack, a narrow passage descended into darkness. The tunnel had been built during Prohibition and ended beyond the tree line. They emerged into deep snow. Evelyn struggled to keep pace. Her ribs burned with every breath. Dominic caught her arm. Your evidence reached them, he said. She stopped. My university account sent a file to Professor Caldwell after I missed 2 logins. Dominic stared at her. You believed I might make you disappear. I believed someone around you might. And you never told me. I needed one thing you could not control. Behind them, agents surrounded the house. Dominic's anger surfaced. My organization may collapse because you missed a school login. No. Evelyn stepped closer despite the pain. It is collapsing because it was built on crimes that could be exposed. His anger drained into something quieter. Exhaustion, loss, perhaps recognition. They returned to Boston after dark. Every news station showed raids at Vale properties. Warehouses were sealed. Employees were taken out in handcuffs. Reporters crowded the entrance to the glass tower overlooking the harbor. Dominic sat in the back of the car watching his empire appear on a small screen. Where the driver asked. Dominic looked at Evelyn. The Marlowe. The restaurant was closed for renovation. They entered through the kitchen. Dust covered the bar. Chairs stood upside down on tables. Plastic sheets moved in the cold air from a broken window. Dominic walked to the corner booth where he had first challenged her. Evelyn sat across from him. Sirens sounded several streets away. Dominic placed his gun on the table. There is a service tunnel beneath the kitchen, he said. It reaches the next block. You can still leave. You are coming with me. No, they will describe you as a woman controlled by a criminal. Sometimes I was. Tell them I forced you. Did you? Dominic looked at the empty whiskey glass left by the renovation crew. He could not answer. Evelyn continued. At first I stayed for my mother. Later leaving became dangerous. And after that she felt the truth before she spoke it. After that, some of the choices were mine. Dominic's eyes closed briefly. I wanted you near me because you spoke while you were afraid. That is not love. I know. Protection is not love, I know. Possession is not love. His gaze moved to the gun. I am beginning to understand. The sirens drew closer. Dominic looked at her. Do you love me? Evelyn's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. I love the moments when you choose to become the man you could have been. And the rest of you frightens me. Dominic nodded once. That is fair. No. She looked at the table where $5,000 had once rested beneath his glass. It is tragic. Voices sounded outside. Federal agents struck the front doors. Dominic reached for the gun. Evelyn stopped breathing. He removed the magazine. He cleared the chamber and placed the empty weapon beyond his reach. The doors burst inward. Armed agents entered the restaurant. Dominic rose slowly and lifted his hands. Before they reached him, he looked at Evelyn and spoke in Russian. "Tell them everything. Do not protect me from the truth." Evelyn stood beside the booth. "Then, give me a truth worth telling." Dominic looked around the abandoned restaurant. No guards moved at his command. No frightened men waited for permission to speak. Only Evelyn remained. "I surrender," he said. The agents placed him in handcuffs and led him through the broken entrance. Snow fell beyond the doorway. Evelyn stayed beside the table where he had once tried to purchase her courage. This time Dominic walked into the light without a weapon, without power, and without anyone left to fear him. 6 months after Dominic Vale surrendered at the Marlowe, Evelyn stood outside a federal courtroom in South Boston, with both hands wrapped around a paper cup she had not touched. Rain covered the courthouse windows. Reporters waited beyond the security barriers. Cameras turned whenever an attorney crossed the marble floor. Dominic's name appeared on every television in the lobby beside words like conspiracy, extortion, customs fraud, and organized crime. Professor Henry Caldwell sat beside Evelyn on a wooden bench. "You have translated men who carried guns beneath the table," he said. That was easier. Why, the words belonged to them. Evelyn looked toward the closed courtroom doors. "Today every word belongs to me." The doors opened. Dominic entered between 2 federal officers. He wore a dark suit without a tie. His hair was shorter. He had lost weight. Nothing about him looked weak, but the symbols that had once announced his power were gone. No guards waited near the walls. No driver stood outside. No one lowered his voice when Dominic passed. He saw Evelyn. For a moment, the courthouse disappeared from his face. Then the officers led him to the defense table. Evelyn sat behind the prosecutors. She had imagined this moment many times. In some versions, she hated him. In others, she forgave him. The truth was less merciful. She loved him. She feared him. She believed he had changed. She also believed change did not erase what came before it. Before Evelyn testified, the government called several victims connected to Vale Maritime. A restaurant owner described years of payments made to men who never issued receipts. A dock worker explained how he lost his job after refusing to change container numbers. A widow spoke about her husband who disappeared days before he planned to meet federal investigators. Then a young woman named Anna Petrov approached the witness stand. Evelyn recognized the surname immediately. Anna was the daughter of the man who had knelt bleeding on the warehouse floor while Mason held brass against his fist. The man Evelyn had saved by changing Dominic's order. Anna looked toward Dominic only once. "My father returned the money," she said. Mr. Vale allowed him to live. The courtroom remained silent. But mercy did not end what happened to us. My father still wakes at night because he believes someone is outside. My younger brother sleeps in my mother's room. We moved twice. We changed schools. Every unfamiliar car makes my mother close the curtains. Anna's voice trembled, but she continued. One man decided my father could live. That did not mean our family became free. Evelyn lowered her eyes. She had carried that night in the warehouse as proof that mercy was stronger than fear. Anna forced her to see the part she had ignored. Stopping a murder had mattered. It had not repaired the terror that came before it. When the court called Evelyn's name, she walked to the witness stand. The clerk asked her to swear that she would tell the truth. Evelyn looked at Dominic. He did not nod. He did not ask anything from her. "I do," she said. The prosecutor approached. "How did you first meet Dominic Vale?" "He came into the restaurant where I worked." "What happened?" "He offered me $5,000 to serve his table in Russian." A quiet movement passed through the spectators. "Why did he make that offer?" "He believed I could not do it." "Could you?" "Yes." The prosecutor placed a copy of the original restaurant bill on the screen. "When did you understand that, mister?" Vale's business involved criminal activity. The first night. And you still accepted employment from him? Yes. Why? Evelyn looked at Claire, who sat in the first row. My mother needed treatment. We had 72 hours to make a payment we could not afford. So you stayed because of financial pressure. At first. The prosecutor paused, and later Evelyn felt every eye in the courtroom turn toward her. Later, leaving became dangerous. Did Mr. Vale threaten you? Not in a simple way. Explain. He investigated me. He controlled my transportation. He knew my schedule. His enemies knew where my mother was being treated. Even when he tried to protect me, his protection limited my choices. Were all your decisions forced? No. The answer moved through the room. Evelyn continued before the prosecutor could ask. Some were. Some were influenced by fear. Some were made because I needed money. Some were mine. Dominic lowered his eyes. The prosecutor asked about the negotiations, the warehouses, the hidden manifests, and Mason Rourke's attempt to frame her. Evelyn described the night Mason kidnapped her. She described the warehouse, the gunfire, the warning she shouted in Russian, Dominic's bullet striking Mason. Did Dominic Vale save your life? The prosecutor asked. Yes. Did he also create the circumstances that placed you in danger? Yes. Did he show you kindness? Yes. Was he capable of violence? Yes. Did his kindness make his crimes less real? No. Did his crimes make every kind act false? Evelyn looked at Dominic. No. The prosecutor waited. Which version was the real man? Both. Evelyn's voice became steadier. He could protect someone with one hand and destroy someone else with the other. If you see only the cruelty, you cannot understand why people trusted him. If you see only the compassion, you ignore what that trust allowed him to do. The courtroom remained still. Dominic's attorney rose for cross-examination. He approached carefully. Miss Carter, were you afraid of my client? Yes. Did that fear affect your decisions? Yes. Did you believe refusing him could place your mother at risk? Sometimes. Then is it fair to say you were controlled by him? Evelyn glanced toward Claire. No. The attorney stopped. No. Not completely. You were financially desperate. You were surrounded by armed men. Your mother depended on money connected to Mr. Vale. All of that is true. Then why resist the description? Because it removes the choices I did make. The attorney's expression tightened. I signed the contract. I attended meetings after I understood what they were. I warned Dominic when Mason betrayed him. I hid evidence. I copied it. I sent it outside Dominic's control. Fear influenced me, but it did not make every decision for me. The attorney looked at Dominic, then back at Evelyn. Do you love my client? Claire closed her eyes. Evelyn felt the question enter the room like a blade. Yes. The attorney stepped closer. Then why should this court trust your testimony? Evelyn looked directly at Dominic. Because love is not an alibi. Dominic's face changed, only slightly. The attorney returned to his table. No further questions. The trial continued for 3 weeks. The government presented shipping records, account transfers, recorded conversations, customs documents, and testimony from former employees. Dominic pleaded guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering, extortion customs, fraud, obstruction, and illegal international shipping operations. The warehouse shooting was examined separately. Evidence showed Mason had kidnapped Evelyn, threatened her life, and opened fire during an armed confrontation. Dominic was not charged with murder, but the judge considered the killing part of a longer history in which violence had often become his answer. Dominic agreed to surrender illegal assets and identify corrupt officials. He gave prosecutors account numbers, shipping routes, names of brokers, and recordings that reached beyond Boston. Several city officials resigned before they could be arrested. 2 customs officers were charged. 3 international partners disappeared before warrants were issued. The legitimate side of Vale Maritime was placed under independent supervision. Employees not connected to criminal operations kept their jobs. Money from seized assets funded restitution for victims. Claire's medical trust remained protected because Dominic had transferred control before the final agreement. At sentencing, Dominic's attorneys prepared a statement describing his childhood, his father's murder, and the violence surrounding his rise to power. Dominic folded the statement and placed it on the table. When the judge asked whether he wished to speak, he stood. I spent years believing that helping some people gave me permission to ignore the people I harmed. His voice carried clearly through the courtroom. I paid medical bills. I kept businesses open. I protected families who depended on me. Then I used those acts to justify fear, violence, and control. He looked toward Anna Petrov. They were not necessary. They were profitable. They made me powerful. I called power responsibility because responsibility sounded better. Dominic faced the judge. My father taught me that fear was the only language men respected. I chose to believe him because fear worked. That choice was mine. He did not ask for forgiveness. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release. Claire took Evelyn's hand as the officers approached. Dominic turned once before they led him away. His eyes found Evelyn. There was no promise in his expression, only acceptance. 1 year later, the Marlowe reopened under independent ownership. Evelyn received a small legal share for unpaid consulting work documented during the investigation. No criminal money entered the business. The cracked leather booths were restored. The old carpet was removed. The corner table remained in the same place. The restaurant hosted Russian and Ukrainian cultural dinners, immigrant poetry readings, translation workshops, and fundraisers for patients facing medical costs. Claire's doctors used the word remission carefully. She returned to the restaurant twice a week where she corrected invoices, argued with suppliers, and refused to let anyone call her fragile. Evelyn finished her degree. Her final thesis examined the ethics of interpretation in situations where language could protect, threaten, or conceal violence. She did not write Dominic's name. She did not need to. The medical foundation, created from his legitimate assets, operated under an independent board. When a reporter asked why Evelyn refused to name it after Dominic, she answered quietly. Patients should not have to thank a powerful man before they are allowed to live. Evelyn visited Dominic in prison, but never often enough to become part of his routine. He studied Russian with books from the prison library. He helped other inmates translate letters to their families. He taught literacy classes. He began drawing again. During one visit, Dominic sat across from Evelyn behind thick glass. "You do not have to keep coming," he said. "I know. I mean it. I know." "Then why are you here?" Evelyn rested one hand beside the telephone. "Because becoming better is easier to pretend when no one remembers who you were." Dominic was silent. "And you intend to remember both versions?" "Yes, that seems fair." Before the visit ended, he pressed a charcoal drawing against the glass. It showed Boston at sunrise. The Marlowe stood in the foreground. Its windows were open. There were no guards, no black cars, no locked doors. On the anniversary of the night they met, snow fell across Boston. After the final guests left, a young waitress helped Evelyn close the restaurant. The girl glanced toward the corner booth. "Is that really where you met him?" "Yes." "Was he as frightening as people say, more?" "And you still answered him in Russian?" Evelyn touched the edge of the table where $5,000 had once rested beneath a whiskey glass. "Yes." "Why?" For a moment, Evelyn remembered the hospital notice hidden in her apron. Claire waiting for treatment. Dominic smiling because he believed fear would make her silent. "I needed the money." The waitress waited. Evelyn turned off the final lamp, and I was finished letting fear speak for me. She locked the restaurant and stepped into the falling snow. Behind her, the corner table remained empty.